Okay, let's start.
Hello, teacher. I'm very happy that you come here today. Before we begin, let me start with just about my group. My group is including four members. I'm Nguyên and it is Khánh, Thư, and Duyên. Today, I'm going to be talk about sustainable architecture of our city and disadvantages and advantages of living in an apartment. Now, let's find out this with us. Our presentation will consider three parts. First, we will talk about sustainable architecture of our city and the most famous building in our city. Then we explain advantages and disadvantages of living in an apartment. Finally, we will discuss the reason people should be part of green spaces in a city. Now I'm going to start with many sustainable architecture of my city. The city I'm living in Cần Thơ, the language city in Mekong detail. Cần Thơ is currently a great one city, an economic, cultural, social, medial, educational, and commercial center of the Mekong Delta. Cần Thơ City is also known as a river town. It is an important hub for regional and international transportation. My city has many modern architecture and it will become a fairly developing city in Southeast Asia. My city has many sustainable architecture and growing, helping the city to developing economy. Moreover, it is also eco-friendly, developing tourists such as Vincom Plaza, Cần Thơ Bridge, Lưu Phương Park. So that's my own. I will invite Duyên show her park.
So, in the next part, I will introduce you to the most famous building in my city. As it is the museum art in the inner of Ho Chi Minh City. You know, it is one of the most ancient building I have ever paid a visit to. It crossed my mind when I was dic- dictating the questions. You know, some people say, "Oh, but gold." I consider it historic, but modern at the same time. But with some colorstone rows, with a lot of traditional paintings. It's a ride if you travel in Ho Chi Minh City without taking a look at this museum. Ho Chi Minh City Museum of Fine Arts is one of the largest museums in Ho Chi Minh. It has it, it has witnessed the ups and downs of history as well as the rise of Ho Chi Minh City after the unification in 1970s. But with the impressive interfering architecture, and in addition, the front of this construction was in an archway with two short staircases leading to the main door. This is also the small fountain with two sculptures on both sides in the center. You can find the antique sculptures and traditional handicrafts of the ancient residents in South Vietnam. This is an interesting idea to pay a visit here on holiday. And here are some pictures of this building. And let's move on to, I will present to the next part. Are apartment buildings popular in your city? Definitely, of course. This is very popular in my city. When a society progresses, a value of everything grows. Land is also too expensive for people to have separate houses, especially in big city where we live. There are a lot of apartments which are a place to live that are part of a larger building. You can own an apartment in a variety of ways depending on your financial situation. If you are a student from elsewhere, you can rent an apartment to live with your friends. It is an effective way to curb costs. If you live with your family, you can rent or even buy a larger apartment to guarantee that anyone has significant spaces. That is the end of my presentation. Let's move on to food, to the next part. Who will present?
To continue our presentation, I will talk about the advantages and disadvantages of living in apartment. So, everything has two sides. When you decide to live in an apartment or a flat, you have to face with some advantages and disadvantages that it brings. I will start by assessing the benefits. Firstly, many apartments have good locations. Apartments in cities are often close to shopping centers, sport facilities, administrative offices, and educational institutions. It reduces the amount of time spent on commuting to work, studying, and entertainment. Aside from that, the issue of security is worth mentioning. Our crime-free space is provided by living in an apartment block. It means that little or no time risks their life on entering your apartment, especially if there are alarm system equipped or your apartment are at high-rise building. Besides, there are usually at least two apartments per floor, which means burglars will have a hard time taking large items out of your apartment. And the last benefits I want to say is the community. As I mentioned before, there are at least two apartments per floor, so you have the opportunity to create some lifelong friendship and connection. It can really helpful in your daily life. On the other hand, there are also a few disadvantages of apartment living, like parking lots might become an annoying issue since the unawareness of residents make you have to ride around the pavement in for just a small spot, mainly because your spot has been overrun. Another problem is pest restriction. Some apartment complexes prohibit pests of any or certain types. There are some residential buildings that allow you to keep pets and provide a play area. If you already own a pet or plan on getting one, choose an apartment that lets you keep pets. The last problem is the one that bothers many people the most is the limited privacy. Living in an apartment means you're likely to share walls and you might have people living above or below you. That might lead to more noisy, less privacy, and more distraction. In conclusion, on these some of the difficult problems that could happen to residents, major advantages could encourage people to rethink about the choice of living in an apartment. That's also the reason why people nowadays prefer to live there. That's at the end of my part. Let's move to the last part presented by Hữu Khánh.
Okay, now I will carry on our presentation. Well, I will answer the question, why do you think there should be parks or green places in the city? There are three reasons. Firstly, it helps us live longer. Some study revealed that in rural areas, with plenty of access to green spaces, the life expectancy of those on the highest and lowest incomes was roughly the same. However, in urban environments, the gap in life expectancy was staggering. People on the lowest incomes living in cities are expected to live 10 years less than those on the highest incomes. This is due to, in part, to the green spaces available to the richer people, who often live in open and leafy areas, while the poorest are often left living in overcrowded, heavily concreted areas. Secondly, we have to talk about air quality. Urban green spaces reveal the effects of what is referred to as the urban heat island. The urban heat island effect appears in towns and cities that are highly populated. So how do urban green spaces mitigate the heat and reduce the pollution? By increasing the amount of plants and trees within urban areas, the effects of heat are alleviated in two ways, by shade and by moisture. Lastly, we have to discuss about noise reduction. Higher greenness and more green spaces in a residential environment were associated with lower noise annoyance, whereas for higher tree cover, tree parasitic stems, leaves, and branches and would absorb sound waves. As a general rule, the more surfaces like leaves, needles, and branches in the tree, the better the noise reduction will be. That is the end of my presentation and our presentation in general. So we have to this is the end for our final project. So thanks for your watching. That's all.